Hi, this is Jennifer Hancock, author of The Bully Vaccine, and this is what to do if your child's a bully. This is something that none of us as parents really want to hear, although I think I might clarify that with most of us don't want to hear our kids are bullies. There are some people who are proud of their kids if they're bullying other kids. It's just what it is. But I assume if you're watching this video, you're like me, you would be horrified if you found out your child was abusing another child and you'd want to do something about it. The problem is what to do, how to do it, what's effective. Because bullying is taking place out of your eye shot. You're not hearing about it. It's not something that's near where you are. So what do you do? Well, in this video and in this toolkit, in this lesson, we're going to talk about the steps you can take as a parent if you find out your child's bullying, what's happening, why it's happening, what you can do as a parent to help teach your child that it's not okay what they're doing, that they need to stop and find better alternatives to their behavior, and what kind of consequences you might be able to provide, and specifically how your child's going to fight you and how to overcome them doing what's called an extinction burst. And if you read my book, you know all about extinction bursts, but we're going to go in case you haven't, we're going to talk about them in this video so that you understand why this is an important dynamic for you to understand as the parent as you help extinguish your child's bullying behavior, because you don't want them to do it anymore. So let's get started. Let's talk about what's happening, what bullying is. Bullying is aggressive behavior. It's not a fight between two kids, although the bully will often phrase it that way when they first get called out on bullying. They'll say, but the other kid did this and that, and I was just defending myself, and the other kid's really the problem. I'm the innocent angel. And they might very well be. And your job as the parent is to figure that out. You don't want to assume that they're an angel. You don't want to assume that they're horrible. But every kid who's caught pretty much is going to tell you, no, it was the other kid. I'm innocent. And again, they very well could be. But if it turns out that they're aggressor and they're lying to you, you want to know that, right? I mean, I would. So I would want to find out from the principal and from the teachers what exactly happened. Having someone tell me my child bullied another kid doesn't tell me what I need to know. I need to know what exactly they did. Did they say something? Did they shove another kid into a locker? Did they punch another kid? Did they trip them? Did they threaten them with violence? Did they threaten to kill the other kid? I mean, I have, parents that tell me, I just found out this other kid's been threatening my kid with death for a month. So don't assume, that it's not mild, but you need to know what exactly your child's being accused of. Are they, is it name calling? Is it pushing someone on the playground? Is it punching someone? Is it threats? Is it actual criminal behavior? You kind of need to know that. So the very first thing you're going to do is find out exactly what your child's being accused of. And then confront your child with this information. And if they say, I didn't do it, say, okay, fine. Yeah, but if you get another report of this, we're going to start dealing with this. I expect no more reports of this kind from you. Now, if it turns out your child is bullying, the question is why? What is going on with them that they feel the need to control another child? Because that's really what bullying is. And it's an attempt by one person to control another person through coercive means, which is intimidation, threats of violence, actual violence. So think of bullying as coercive, like aggressively coercive. It's not just teasing. It's not just a fight. It's an attempt by one person to control another person. So the question you need to ask is not just, did my child do this, but why? Why do they feel the need to control other kids? And the thing about it is you might never get to the bottom of that. This might just be one of those learned behaviors. Bullying is often just a strategy to accomplish goals. Kids learn that by being aggressive and threatening other kids, they can get the other kid's toy, or they can get the other kid to do the things they want, or they can get the other child to play the games that they want. This is why friends bully each other. Not because they're trying to be mean, but because it works. So the next question you kind of have to ask yourself is not just, did your child do it, and exactly what is it that they're being accused of? And the more specific those allegations are, the more likely your kid's going to cop to it. But why? And you also have to consider, is your child under extreme stress that's causing them to act out inappropriately? Do they have problems with language? Are they insecure? A lot of times kids that bully are very, very, very insecure. They're not sure of their friends. They're not well liked. They have social issues. And if your child's being bullied, I would absolutely, if your child is being accused of being bullied, I would find out if they're happy in school, and if they're not, start working with them on strategies on how to make friends in a proactive way as opposed to this aggressive way that they're working on and failing at. Because people don't come ready-made with social skills. They have to learn them, and you owe it to your child to teach them explicitly pro-social skills so that they don't have to rely on the antisocial skills that they figure out for themselves that ostracize them from their peers. And another reason to do this is because kids who bully are 60% more likely to end up in the criminal justice system. This is not something that they're just doing in school. It's going to follow them into their adult life as a life strategy. And you really don't want them to learn to, hurt other people to get their way as their chosen life strategy. So you really need to pay attention to this. So, what is happening, what specifically is going on so that you can address it with your child. Why are they doing this? And how can you help them learn the skills that they need to learn to accomplish their objectives in a less violent and aggressive way? And not to take away, some kids are just naturally aggressive, and that's actually a double-edged sword. So you don't want them to lose the good aspect of that, but they need to know how to channel that in a way that is helpful and not harmful to other kids. So what can you do as a parent? Well, that's the $60 million question, isn't it? It's not easy to get bullies to stop doing what they're doing, even when they're your child. And the reason it's not easy is because bullying works. Kids get a reward from other kids for this antisocial behavior. They get status in their peer group. The other kids are afraid of them. They get their way. They get a lot of advantages from doing this. And this is not something you as the parent can really intervene with at the school in real time with their friends, because you're not there and you're not supposed to be there. So you're limited as a parent on what you could do, but there are a lot of things that you can do, even though you're not physically there in the moment to shut it down. The most effective way is the idea of consequences, that you're going to take a multi-pronged approach with your child. One is to help them deal with the stresses and the negativity that's infecting their lives so that they can choose better behaviors. Oftentimes, kids might be jealous, like if you've got a divorce going on in the family and they're really stressed out, they might lash out at kids whose parents seem to be getting along fine. There's a number of reasons why kids lash out at kids that they're jealous of. So if that's what's going on, you need to identify that and address it. If someone else is bullying them, and they're bullying in response to that, because sometimes victims become bullies, you need to address that as well and teach them how to deal with their bully without lashing out violently. These are all things you need to do explicitly. And if that's the case, you need to take the other class, what to do if your child is being bullied, and how to talk to the child's school about bullying. Now, assuming your child everything's basically fine. They're just doing this as a strategy. They don't have a mental health issue that you need to get addressed with a professional, because I can't help you with that. Assuming that, there's no other stressors in their life that you need to take care of, but they've just learned that this works. Maybe they're the mean girl or the bad boy, and they like that about themselves. What can you do to help retrain your child into more pro-social activities when you're not at the school to correct them in real time? The first one is to let them know in no uncertain terms that their behavior is not acceptable. And you don't have to be mad at them. In fact, the more calm you are and the more rational you are when you have this conversation with your child, the better it's going to be for the child. They don't want to necessarily feel that they've disappointed you, but you need to explain to them that this is not okay. And you can use that exact word, this is not okay. What do we need to do to fix this? And we as your parents feel strongly enough, or I as your parent feel strongly enough, that I'm going to take this very seriously and address this. And again, keep in mind, if a kid is a bully, they're going to lie about what they've done. And you need to be prepared for that. And you say, fine, you didn't do this, you're being wrongly accused. If that's the case, I will absolutely, as your parent, back you up. But I'm also not going to tolerate you retaliating against what another kid is doing. So if your kid is saying, but the other kid did this other thing first, you say, okay, fine, I believe you on that. But you know what? Your response to that was inappropriate. So let's talk about more appropriate ways to deal with the conflict that you have so that you don't end up bullying this person back, because that's not acceptable. And you teach them those strategies. And you let them know, if this happens again and they retaliate again, that you are going to give them a consequence, because you want them to handle this problem in a pro-social way, which is reporting and notifying the teacher. It's not their job to beat up another kid for stealing from them. That's a criminal matter that the adults need to intervene on. So your child should be taught how to get the help that they need so that they don't have to do this themselves. All right. And if it turns out that your child is in fact the aggressor, it'll come out very, very quickly through this process. So the first thing you do is you accept your child's statements at face value. And you say, I've got your back, but let's deal with this. And if you retaliate in the future, there are going to be consequences, because that's not okay. What I want you to do is X, Y, and Z. I want you to report. I want you to do these other things instead of the violent behavior that you're displaying towards this other kid. Because if the other kid's the bully, this will help the school differentiate between what looks like a conflict and what is actually a bullying situation. And if your kid's innocent and they're the ones being bullied, them not retaliating is going to make it easier and faster for the school to identify that and deal with the other kid. Again, if it turns out it's your kid that's being bullied, this will also identify that quickly. Now, if your child does retaliate or continues on in this behavior, there have to be consequences. And again, if your child is a bully and is not just acting out in response to being bullied, but they're actually the aggressor, and it happens, it happens, what are those consequences? Well, you need to take away privileges. And I can tell you, and these privileges are kind of predicated on what stage of bullying it is. If they're just calling people silly names like, hey, you're stinky, because they're in kindergarten and they're saying someone's stinky, the consequence to that is going to be very different than if they're accused of throwing a kid into a locker or flushing their head, giving them a whirly or something really violent, or stealing. Okay, those consequences are going to be a lot more severe than calling someone stinky. But if they're making threats of violence, and they're cyberbullying and telling someone that they're worthless and they should kill themselves, I would treat that with the same severity I would physical violence. All right, because at that point, what they're doing is stalking their victim, and it's not okay. Doesn't matter. I don't care how much they don't like that other kid. That's not the way to deal with their anger and their frustration and things like that. And again, you have to intervene and teach them the appropriate ways to deal with all of those emotions that they have. It's not okay to go beat someone else because they stole your girlfriend or your boyfriend. That's not the way that you handle those sorts of disappointments, and you as the parent need to teach that. So what are the consequences? Well, if it's a 5-year-old who called someone stinky, they may lose television privileges or, electronic toy privileges for a couple of days. If they're guilty of physical violence or greater threats, they may lose all extracurricular activities as well. And the kid ain't going to like that at all, especially if they think they're innocent. So expect your child to fight you with this, but this is like any other consequence as a parent you're going to give them. And they just have to deal with that. And the sooner they accept that, the quicker they get through this. But that's the problem, isn't it? The child's not going to accept this. They're not going to accept that suddenly their behavior is being caught and they're getting consequences for it. And, if your child is a bully, is the aggressor, you can take their privileges away and give them back when you stop getting reports. But expect them to retaliate. Bullies, when they get caught, will retaliate against their victims. So you need to make it very, very clear that if they retaliate, you're going to take away a couple of privileges right now on the assumption that they're innocent and they're going to do better next time. But if you hear of them retaliating, they're losing everything. They're losing all electronics, their telephone, everything. You're just taking it all away, all their extracurricular activities, everything. Is this inconvenient to you as a parent? Oh, heck yeah, it is. But if your child's a bully, you need to kind of be aggressive with your child in a compassionate way to get them to stop. You need to make sure they understand the severity of this. Now, if your child's the bully and you start this, they are going to go through what's known as a blowout, an extinction burst. They're going to work on their victim to try and get the victim to stop reporting them. This is the retaliation that we often see with bullies. They retaliate against the victim for reporting them. And again, you have to make it super clear. Retaliation, not acceptable at all. It results in the loss of everything. And again, if your child is bullying, they will retaliate. Most kids who are victims will not retaliate against a bully. It will not retaliate, but if they are a bully and they're practiced at it, they absolutely will. So expect your child to retaliate and be prepared to take away everything. And they get it back. They start getting things back as they start exhibiting good behavior, and you stop getting reports of their bullying. And they get the rewards back right away. For every day they don't get a report, they get something back. And every day they get a report, they go back to square one. Right? And I'm sure you've heard of this technique before. And again, if your child's in soccer, they're on the swim team, they're in opera, they're taking ballet classes, they've got all these extracurricular activities they're in on, eliminating all that is an inconvenience to them and to you, and it's a huge, huge punishment. But again, if they're a bully, there's no other way to get them to stop but to make the consequences of their behavior so high that they will want to, stop. All right, and that's your job as the parent, is to make sure those consequences are high enough. And again, the stakes for your child are really quite high if they are in fact actively engaged in bullying. So it's worth it. It's hard, it's inconvenient, but you got to do it. Now, your child will blow out through an extinction burst. If they're the bully, they will blow out and they'll get more aggressive with their victim and try to get this to stop. Now, what you need as the parent is constant communication with the school. You need a report every single day about what your child did or didn't do in real time, so that your child can't come home and say, oh, it was fine, but 3 days later you find out that they did something else. You want to know from their teachers and from the principal every single day whether there was an incident or not. Ideally, you're going to want to get that information from the victim's parents to make sure that you get that information, that the victim's parent is asking their child, did something happen? So that you know what kind of consequences that evening you should be giving your child, or whether or not they're behaving better and can get some of their privileges back. This doesn't take long. If you do this, it's kind of like sleep training a child. You got a few days of intense pain as the child blows out and fights back and gets angry and fights and tries to get you as the parent to give up these consequences. But the sooner they learn that there are real consequences to their behavior, and you consider their behavior severe enough to warrant these sorts of extreme takeaway of privileges, the sooner your child's going to get with the program. And again, you need reporting daily. And if the school's not giving it to you, you need to reach out to the victim's parent and say, I am so sorry for what my child's doing. Here's what I'm doing on my side to help my child be a better person and stop hassling your kid. But I need to know from you if he transgresses or he or she transgresses, so that I can deal with it immediately on our side. And, we're in this together. I'm trying to get my child to protect your child and vice versa. So, don't be afraid to ask for that level of reporting. The big thing you don't want to do is stick your head in the sand and just assume it's going to go away on its own. It will not. You cannot just have a conversation with a bully and say, you need to stop doing that and have it be done. Doesn't work like that. They are actively getting rewards. The victim needs to be reporting all the time, and you need to encourage their parents to have them report your child. You want them to report your child. You really do, because you can't fix this without that real-time information. And don't worry about another kid lying about your child. If the amount of courage it takes to report bullying, the number of false reports about bullying are incredibly small. And again, if the other kid is the bully and your child's the victim, this process is going to weed that out very, very quickly. Because if your child refuses to retaliate, then the other kid is going to be found out to be the bully very, very quickly. So if that's what you're worried about, don't worry about that. And, you just have to let your child know, look, I have your back, but we have to take these steps just to be sure that we're covering all our bases. And this is the process we have to go to. And this is going to help you get the other kid to leave you alone if that's what your child is saying. It works both ways. So if your child is being accused of being a bully, take that seriously. They most likely have engaged in aggressive bullying behavior, whether it is retaliatory bullying behavior or whether it's all of them is really the question. Not whether or not they engaged in bad behavior, but whether or not it was retaliatory or not. These techniques, making sure that you know exactly what happened, teaching your child the more pro-social ways to deal with conflict, getting them professional help if that's what they need, and making sure that there's consequences for them if they continue to engage in aggressive behavior is what's going to get this stopped. And again, if your child's the victim in all of this, it's going to come out within a week when you start this. So don't worry about it going on too long or that your child's going to be falsely accused. Just assume that your child is telling you the truth, but verify. Trust but verify, and take the steps necessary to retrain them. Because again, if they are being physically aggressive, the other person is never going to be found to be the bully, period. In order for them to prove that the other kid is being the bully, they need to stop their aggressive behavior and start handling the conflict in a different way. They won't do that if they are the ones that are being the bullies. If they are the victims, they will do this step, but if they're the bullies, they won't. And then you'll have to go to handling their retaliatory behavior from them. And again, you got to expect them to retaliate. If they are a bully, they absolutely will retaliate. So you give them an opportunity to shape up. And if and when they fail, and there's a good chance they will, then you go into the more aggressive, take everything away and start giving it back. And yes, it's inconvenient to you as a parent. Grow up. You're the parent. This is what you need to do. This is the only way to get it done. Now, below is a lot more reading on this and explaining it all. And again, I do recommend you buy my book, The Bully Vaccine, to explain this extinction burst process. Because if your child is a bully, they're going to go through this extinction burst, and you need to help them get through it as quickly as possible. And you do that by providing kind of extreme consequences. Not harmful. You're not going to physically hurt child, obviously. But you're going to take away privileges so that the cost of their bad behavior becomes so high that it's worth it to them to stop. Because if everything is left on their side the same, they're not going to stop. They're not going to have any incentive to stop. You need to do your part by providing these consequences. And I'm going to have a list of more specifically what that is below. Thanks. And if you have any questions, put them in the comment section. I do read them and I do answer them. Thanks.